Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. This is something that I have never really told anyone about, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately, so here it is. A few years back, around 2015 to 2016, when I was around 18 to 19, I used to work at this little cafe inside of a car parts factory. It was basically a full-out but compact restaurant kitchen and a lunchroom for the workers to eat there. Well, this one day, I got a call from my best friend / coworker, and she's all kinds of upset because of this creepy new temp worker that made her feel severely uncomfortable by asking her a bunch of personal questions, like what she drove, where she lived, if she was single, if she had any kids, and when she got off of work. She didn't want to walk out to her car alone, and mind you, she was my age too. She was 18 to 19, and this dude was mid to late 30s, if not already in his early 40s, and we're in Flint, Michigan, so we weren't about to take any chances. I drive up to the parking lot, I find her car, parked next to it, and she has a security guard escort her out. We didn't see the guy then, but she described him to me and the guard, and that was that for a few days. Someone found him and told him to stay away from her, and he did. But then he met me. I knew exactly who he was as soon as he stepped up to the register to place his lunch order. Just from the description that I had been given and by the creepy vibes that he was giving off, he pulled the same intense Q&A on me that he had done to my friend too, but instead of telling him to piss off, or maybe calling security or anything like that, I just told him a bunch of straight up lies. I told him that I drove a blue 2012 Honda Civic, which I knew for a fact was one of the second shift manager's vehicles who always parked near the front of the building, and so I knew that it was going to be there until second shift ended at around 11 p.m. I also told him that my shift ended at around 9:30, which was really the time that I usually slipped out for a cigarette break. So when 9:30 hit later that night, I walk outside to smoke my cigarette, and I saw exactly what I was expecting to see. The stupid creep in the parking lot close to the area that the Honda Civic was sitting. He was just pacing back and forth between two vehicles that were parked a few spaces down in the same row. He was playing on his phone the entire time. At one point, he glanced up and saw me staring at him, but I had my big leather winter coat and a hat on, so I don't really know if he recognized me at first from a distance or not. I finished my smoke and I went back inside, and I then explained the entire situation to the security guards, one of which was the original guard that had escorted my friend out to her car a couple of days before. And they were dying laughing at the fact that I had pulled one over on the prick and had actually caught him being shady. I'm not sure what exactly they did about it because I went back to work after that, but I do know that they immediately went out and confronted him in the parking lot, and that guy was fired the same week. To this day, I still don't know what his intentions were, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out that it couldn't have been anything good. So ultimately, the moral of the story is always have your friends back and trust your instincts, because if you don't, you could end up cornered in a parking lot and possibly attacked or abducted by some creepy guy who asks one too many questions. I originally shared this last night, but I deleted it on accident while trying to delete a different post. I ended up removing some specific details from the story this time around, so if you happen to catch it last night, then you got the uncensored version. I used to live in a 3-story house with my parents, my younger sibling, and our dog. We moved into this house a few months before my younger sibling was born, and that was when we first met the neighbors across the street. Lucas, who was the oldest child in their family, was always a bit strange, but there were some aspects of his personality that were more than just strange. They were straight up disturbing. It would take hours to cover everything, so I'm just going to get straight to the point. I'm almost positive that Lucas has been inside of our house in the middle of the night. Our house was built on a hill, so it looked like it was only 2 stories from the front, and the basement was connected to the backyard. The yards in this neighborhood were much larger than they were in newer housing developments, so it would have been very easy for someone to enter our backyard unnoticed. Despite this, my family was terrible at making sure that all the basement doors were locked. My younger sibling and I would always go in and out when we were playing in the backyard, or someone would go down to let the dog out, and we would end up forgetting to lock one of the doors before bed. We also lived in a safe area where it was common for people to leave their doors unlocked. However, my family did always lock the door leading down to the basement every night, along with all of the other doors on the main level of the house. I had a messed up sleep schedule back then, so I would usually still be awake at 3 or 4 in the morning. There were 2 specific instances that happened very late at night, which make me think that Lucas has been inside of our house without our knowledge. One night, I was in my bedroom on the upper level of the house. It was probably around 2:30 in the morning when I suddenly heard the sound of an angry growl coming from downstairs. Thinking that my dog had spotted a cat in the front yard, I quickly rushed downstairs to stop him from barking and waking up my entire family. This kind of thing would happen every now and then, so I wasn't thinking too much of it at that time. But instead of going downstairs and finding my dog by the front window, I found him by the locked door that leads down to the basement. The fur on the back of his neck was standing up, and his nose was pressed to the bottom of the door. I instantly froze when I realized what was happening. There was something or someone on the other side of the basement door. I was barely a teenager at the time, so I began to panic and started making my way upstairs as quietly as possible. I woke both of my parents, but neither of them took me very seriously. My dad just assumed that my dog was hearing random noises coming from outside, but he did eventually go down to check things out. He said that everything downstairs looked normal, but he also mentioned that we forgot to lock one of the basement doors that night. Then, there was another time that I was up late in my room, but this time, instead of hearing my dog growling, I heard a loud bark that echoed throughout the entire house. The sound was sudden and intense, similar to a gunshot, and it almost made me jump out of my chair. Assuming again that my dog had seen a cat outside, I quickly looked out of my bedroom window and tried to spot whatever he was barking at. But my heart suddenly dropped when instead of seeing a cat, I saw Lucas running out of our front yard in pitch black. I watched him run across the street and back towards his own house. And before I rushed to close the curtains and duck out of sight, I remember sitting there struggling to process what I had just seen and questioning why Lucas would be in our yard in the middle of the night. I told my mom about it the very next morning, and she said that she would bring it up to his mom. Because of these 2 instances, and because of the other details that I can't include, I'm 99.9% sure that Lucas has been inside of our house in the middle of the night. If you knew the entire story behind this family, then you would also find the thought of this to be extremely disturbing. I do want to mention that this all happened years ago. My family no longer lives in that house, and those neighbors across the street are doing fine. But looking back on everything now, I'm realizing just how creepy the situation truly was. This happened last summer, and now the nights are getting lighter out, I am reminded of the fear that I experienced. I was in my second year at my company, my first job, and I wanted to live alone. There were girls I wanted to flirt with, and I couldn't be bringing them back to my parents' house. It would be my first time living alone, so I picked a place pretty close to work. I am pretty slow in the mornings. I found a nice enough apartment, and the rent didn't seem that frightening, so I pulled the trigger. The move coincided nicely with my summer vacation. I had a couple of weeks off, and after the move, I was in no hurry up early. I slept in. Every day that I was off work, I seemed to stay up later and get up later. I loved reading message boards online, especially 2chan. And one night, I was up late. It was about 2 a.m. I heard a terrifying noise. The doorknob of my front door started to turn. It sounded like someone tried the door handle. I'm not gonna lie, it scared the hell out of me. It's creepy enough if you get a knock at the door or someone goes for the doorbell at night. But when someone just grabs the doorknob and tries it, that's a different level. I sat at my computer desk watching the doorknob for a few minutes in silence. It didn't turn again, and that was it. I thought I had better call it a night at that point. I thought about what just happened, and I wondered if it was a friend of mine, or maybe a drunken neighbor mistaking my apartment for his. I guessed that it was the latter. The next night I was up again late, and the same thing happened. At around 2 a.m., the doorknob violently turned. I had to do something even though I was terrified. I tiptoed over to the door. I put my eye to the peephole. However, when I looked, whoever was out there was already gone. The mysterious person who was trying my door handle continued to harass me for another 2 nights. And on a 5th night, I invited my friend over to drink with me. I was pretty stressed by it, so having my friend over for some beers was exactly what I needed. He ended up bringing a friend too, so there were 3 of us drinking. We ran out of booze and snacks at around 2 a.m., and luckily for me, there was a 7-Eleven about 30 seconds walk from my new place. I decided or forgot to lock the door, and I just headed to the shop. I mean, 2 of my friends were in there, so I thought that it would just be fine. I left my apartment, and a couple of seconds went by. I was in the hallway making sure that I had my wallet on me and my phone. Suddenly, my apartment door opened and then slammed shut. I instantly thought that whatever had been trying to get in had finally found its chance. I pushed thoughts of the paranormal aside, and I ran in to speak with my friends. I asked, "Hey, did one of you guys just open the door?" They looked at me puzzled, and my friend's friend replied, "Wasn't that you opening the door just now?" To be honest, I was more than buzzed. I had a fair few beers, and that recent incident made me desire more. On the way to the store, I mulled things over in my head, and I decided that I might just be imagining things or making mountains out of molehills. I went back to my apartment with a new attitude. I felt like telling my friends about the spooky things going on with the doorknob, and we had a heck of a laugh over it. Well, it really took the edge off of the situation, you know? When I tried to explain why I was scared, I ended up laughing. I could see how absurd I had been. My friend and his friend ripped on me, and I guess I deserved it. We got back to drinking and we stayed up late. It turned into a really good night in the end, and nothing spooky happened after that. I had always assumed that whatever the doorknob turning thing was, it was paranormal. I don't know, maybe it was the images it conjured in my head when I heard it so late. Also, I never saw the culprit, so I kind of thought, whoa, I'm dealing with the unknown here. The doorknob never turned while I was looking through the peephole, so I guess that it could have been some kind of mischievous person in the neighborhood, or a would-be home intruder. These things are usually explainable. If it's a human, you know, a stalker, a thief, or someone else, and that's just as scary as the paranormal for me. It wasn't as if the problem was solved. But I will say one thing though. I didn't hear the doorknob turn at 2 a.m. the following night, or any night after for that matter. Instead, the bad dreams came. I was suffering. The nightmares I was having were so real and frightening, it was really affecting my day-to-day life. These nightmares were kind of abstract, so stay with me here. I dreamt of a woman who kind of manifested through the ventilation fan, like The Ring. You know where she crawls out of the TV? This one. But she crawled out of the ventilation fan. She defied gravity. She could plant her feet and hands on the wall and crawl down on it. She twisted and turned like she was a crab walking on the walls, and it was hideous. I would see this nightmare roughly twice a week at first, then it became 3 times a week, and at one point I was so distracted, it was all that I could think about. When early autumn came around, I decided enough was enough. I needed to take a look at that fan, or at least replace it. I didn't want to do it after work at night, so I waited for the weekend and then took the fan apart with my tools. I really wanted it gone. It was dirty inside the fan, and I mean I expected it, but it was black with dirt in there. Then, I found something that deeply disturbed me. There was something taped with duct tape in the back of the ventilation pipe. I ripped the age-rough tape away, and I heard a plinking kind of sound. Something fell. They slid down the ventilation pipe as if it was a slide. It was 3 blackened molar teeth that landed on my linoleum floor. I nearly fell off the chair that I was stood on. The initial shock I felt gave way to depression, not for myself, but somehow it felt secondhand, like it wasn't mine. I doubt I'm making any sense, but I might as well finish my story. Now, in most movies or works of fiction, the person in my shoes might be running to the temple, or maybe a shrine, a church, or whatever that set things straight. They might even dig into the building's history, or ask about former residents. But I didn't. I couldn't. It's not just who I am. I just threw the teeth I found in the burnable trash, and I'm sure that's the same as cremation, I guess. I mean, in Japan, you would pay to get things burned to purify yourself and set the soul of the tormented at peace. But hey, the garbage gets burned, doesn't it? Sorry, there isn't much of an ending here. The only ending I can share is that the ending of my nightmares, so whatever I did, it worked. Well, for now, I guess. This was a weird experience that I had when I was in high school. It happened when my friends and I went to play with our airsoft guns. A survival game is what we call it. There were about 10 of us in all. We used to use this abandoned hotel. It was completely dilapidated and falling apart in places. There were loads of debris in there, making it perfect to pop up and shoot one another. The best thing about it was that it was so far away. There were literally no houses or anything like that nearby, and if we played at night, there would be no chance of us being disturbed. Because some of the kids from our school thought that it was haunted, they didn't even go anywhere near it, not even the bullies. So it was perfect. We really felt like it was just ours, you know? I would sometimes get a bit freaked out in there. I mean, it was a creepy abandoned hotel. On top of that, it was said to be haunted. So, who wouldn't be a bit on edge, right? My friends would make fun of me every time I got freaked out though. I usually got swept up in the excitement of it all, and then forgot about that nagging eerie feeling that the abandoned hotel produced. But not this time. There was something off that night. After playing intensely for a while, we went up to the 5th floor, and there was a big open room pretty much rid of any debris. We would use that room to chat and make sure that all of our guns were working and etc. And while everyone was gathered, I asked, "Did any of you feel anything was a bit off in the hotel today? Like, do you sense anything with us?" They said that since what we do when we play airsoft is aim our guns at one another, we are bound to have our senses heightened, but some did agree that something felt different that night. Just as we were discussing this, we heard some footsteps on the stairs below, and they resounded through the hotel. We hadn't heard any cars or motorbikes approaching, and like I said before, we were in the sticks. There was nothing but overgrown weeds and bushes surrounding the hotel. Everyone had flashlights, it was a rule. A couple of my pals shone their flashlights through the window down below, and we couldn't see any cars or anything. I was relieved as I was worried that the cops had arrived. All that was down there were our bikes. If someone was here, they would have had to walk halfway up a mountain in the dark on roads with little street light. Weird. We still heard those footsteps down below. One of my friends opened the door to our room on the 5th floor and asked, "Are you the police? We were just playing here, that's all." When no response came from down below, someone else called, "Are you here for ghost hunting or something?" Again, nothing but the footsteps of someone below, climbing the stairs ever closer to our floor. Some others piped up with questions. "What do you want? Do you need some help or something?" "If we shouldn't be here, we can go." But no matter what anyone said, the only reply we got was the sound of someone slowly climbing the stairs. I had already been on edge most of the night, but now I was freaked. Fear was spreading through our group. In fact, my friends murmured, "Whisper, guys. We don't know what's down there." "No one, run. Just walk calmly." And we left our room and entered the hall. We headed towards the opposite steps which we had heard the footsteps come from. And just as we reached the opposite stairs, we heard those same chilling footsteps land in the hallway. We couldn't see anyone. It was terrifying. Then something completely unexplainable happened. It looked for a second as if someone was pointing a light at us. A light, not like that of a flashlight. It was there shining in front of us. It was circular and it swayed and bobbed, and it scared the hell out of us. We bolted. We all burst past one another in an effort to get out as soon as possible. We heard a terrible noise from above, like something had turned the whole 5th floor upside down. We could still hear the sound of someone pacing around on the stairs and in the lobby up there. I cannot describe to you how terrified I was. We were all shouting and cussing as we ran to our bikes outside. One of my friends was having engine trouble with his bike and it wouldn't start. We were screaming at him to get it going while all our eyes were fixed on the hotel. Finally, he got it working and we all sped out of there. We all pulled into a convenience store's parking lot at the bottom of the mountain and we felt safe there. After we calmed down a little, we spoke about what had happened. I can't speak for my friends because I didn't witness this, but more than a couple of them said that they had seen some faces peering out at us from the windows above while we tried to get our pal's bike started. We stared towards the mountain in the direction of the hotel, and I think we all knew at that point that none of us would ever go back there again. And here are the top comments from my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.